According to the World Population Clock, there are currently close to 8.1 billion people on our planet. What if I told you that almost 800 million people cannot properly read or write? At least 7 to 8 out of 10 people live on less than $10 a day. And it's estimated that about 1 billion people don't even have $1 a day. My only question to you, how do these numbers make you feel? The fact that you are wealthier than more than half of the world. And believe me, I don't want this to go the direction of if you live in a Western country, you're already rich, so be grateful for that and period. That's about it. Because if you're perfectly honest with yourself, you don't care about these numbers at all. You couldn't care less because you would always look up and you see people crushing it way more than you. They are wealthier than you, they are more successful than you, and they are more beautiful than you. And in the end, if you're perfectly honest, your impact in this world is not gonna matter anyway, unless you're settled and somehow content with yourself first. Do you know who Pietro Boselli is? Let me tell you. He's a male supermodel who's also a mathematician and holds a PhD. So he's basically a model and a professor. He's 34 years old, yet looks like in his early 20s, and in terms of money, he's probably well off at this point. The question is, what does that have to do with you? The answer is technically nothing. And yet there is something. You are a human being, a social creature, and you probably just had a certain emotional reaction to the list of accomplishments of Pietro Boselli. Unlike so many other videos, the message of this video will certainly not be stop comparing yourself to others. I want to first provide you with some more context on the psychology involved and then provide you with a different, fresh perspective on the topic. If you search through Google or YouTube, the amount of searches and results on comparing yourself to others or how to stop comparing yourself is incredibly high. My biggest issue with this whole comparison topic is the fact that the immediate reaction and advice is always the same. Stop comparing yourself to others, or how to stop comparing yourself to others. And I'm wondering, if so many people compare themselves all the time, shouldn't there be some sort of underlying reason or evolutionary purpose to do it? Because if most people deploy a certain behavior, chances are there's a very good reason for that. Or are we simply all insecure and stupid? We're not, because there is indeed a purpose of comparison, and once you understand where it comes from, your perspective will change. We have to look at something called social comparison theory. According to a guy called Leon Festinger, the social comparison theory basically says human beings gain information about their social worth by comparing themselves to others. You supposedly evaluate your values, achievements, or opinions based on the comparison with those of other people. This is strongly tied to our self-esteem, and comparisons are definitely not a bad thing. Back in the days when human beings were organized in tribes, your survival was directly tied towards your belonging to a tribe or group, and especially linked to your position within that tribe. Thus, subconsciously, we are wired to constantly evaluate our social worth, our position compared to other human beings. Because once a tribe cuts you off, you quickly lose your resources, your safety, and overall support structure to survive in a world of wild animals, a tough nature, or other tribes you couldn't possibly fight by yourself. Nowadays, life is way more complex, but we still heavily operate in groups, at work, in friendships, and whenever we encounter a social interaction. Does your social value qualify you to be around certain environments, or will you be excluded by some of our modern tribes? We cannot simply get rid of deeply rooted concepts of survival, and comparison is certainly one of those features. The idea of stopping or removing the urge to compare yourself to other people is not sufficient. Instead, we have to channel this instinct. There's a common pattern we see with the whole comparison topic. You compare yourself on a daily basis, both online and offline. And for reasons we're going to address later, you end up feeling dissatisfied after most of these comparisons. You now have two impulses. Either you feel the urge to step up your own game, trying to win the comparison game by reaching the top, or you feel you wanna stop the comparisons, now and for good. Neither one of these actions result in a desirable state of mind. And to the surprise of many, it's probably the latter that will make you more miserable. There is this narrative of people having to stop comparing themselves to others if they want to be happy. As Theodore Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. But gladly you now know about the tribes and the importance of comparing. Anyway, let's dig further into the comparison dynamics. There's something called positional bias. We tend to do upward comparisons more often than the other way around. Of course, our own position seems lower compared to the celebrities you're being exposed to almost every day. And yet, in reality, your position is probably much better than you think. Let's quickly talk about the role of self-esteem here. Would you say your self-esteem is rather high or low? To be honest, many people struggle a lot with a low self-esteem. They are insecure about themselves and they don't feel worthy in many cases. In that case, social comparisons play a big role, especially comparing yourself to people who seem to do better than you. The relationship between self-esteem and social comparison is quite interesting. Research suggests that people with high self-esteem tend to gain motivation and positive feelings from upward comparisons. They get inspired. However, high self-esteem people tend to compare themselves much less overall. People of low self-esteem, however, compare themselves way more often, and particularly upward comparisons make them feel worse, insufficient and less worthy from their perspective. That means an oversupply of comparison stimuli doesn't help at all if you have a low self-esteem anyway. The way out is to do foundational work on your self-esteem. So regardless of what measures you take, from therapy to workouts, you need that time and focus for yourself and cannot waste it in comparison spirals. That's where social media comes into play, but we will cover that in a bit, even the advantages of it. By the way, subjectively, the feeling you get from being better than 100 people below you will never compensate for the feeling of knowing there's one single person ahead of you. It bothers you, and it never stops. You think you can win the comparison game simply by reaching the highest levels possible, becoming the best. The big problem though, the comparison issue is always present. These people struggle with the same issue. The idea that the chase will stop once you are big enough is an illusion. You won't stop. And out of 8 billion people, you poor rat would have a lot to chase if that's how you want to excel. The comparison race is not a race to the top. It's a loser race. You 100% will leave this game as a loser. Life is random. For every Ronaldo, there's a Messi. For every McGregor, there's a Khabib. For every Stan Lee, who lived an incredible 95 years, there's a Chadwick Boseman, who sadly only had 40 years. Okay, so what's next? Instead of playing the game with others, play it by yourself, with yourself. There's a point where you realize you drive yourself insane trying to win the game when you never played the same game as the others in the first place. Your playground is different and your rules are different. Another common advice: compare yourself to who you were yesterday. We understand it, but it's not enough. We want to be better than others because we live in a world with other people. We see other people and their results every day. It's hard to escape from that. You open social media and see nice cars, millions of followers and likes, great physiques and beautiful faces. Why would you not be up there, having and being everything you possibly imagined? Social media has for sure changed the way people feel about themselves as part of society. The question is social media all bad and are we doomed as soon as we use it? The answer can surprisingly be no. You just have to change the way you use it. But first things first. You have to be aware of what you're getting yourself into. You are literally fighting against a machine learning algorithm that is designed to keep you on the platform, thus keeping you in your comparison loop. You are the one to break that pattern and expose yourself to a more peaceful state. One solution is to put your phone aside, especially from using functions like the Instagram feed. If quitting or deleting Insta seems too big of a step for you, you can either deactivate your account for a while, having the option to come back anytime, or In case you keep it activated, at least you choose the non-personalized option when using the Instagram feed. You're much less likely to get into extensive Insta usage when the suggested content isn't designed to your personal interests. A great way to reduce your session time and your stress level. And given how easy to influence we are as human beings, we have the tendency to quickly jump to conclusions. We see a facade of a person on social media, a gorgeous looking person, and we suddenly think we know everything about that person. That girl has a model face. This guy has a shredded physique. Thus, they are happy, confident, successful, and live a blessed life overall. What would they even have to worry about? And stuck in our ignorance, we don't realize we don't know these people online at all. You don't see the loans and debt some people took to seem successful. You have no clue how much the Lambo person may be struggling in real life because they can almost not breathe due to their lifestyle and costs killing them. They couldn't pay for the Lambo if they missed a single week of grinding. You don't see the insecurities people have on not being accepted, liked, loved enough. You don't see how painful it is for some people to not have enough strangers compliment and validate their looks or their expensive clothes every single day, and they feel miserable because they never learned to fill these gaps from within. You neither see how organs suffer from steroid abuse of some of the perfect looking physiques that aren't achievable naturally. You don't see their emotional roller coaster and their sleeping disorders. You know what you neither see when comparing yourself to others, offline and online. You do not see how much sacrifice and work a person put in to actually own their Lambo or mansion. You have no clue that a person lost his or her parents early on, but the pain pushed them into becoming a workaholic who found big success in business, making millions but having gone through pain you don't even want to experience. And lastly, you don't see the pressure a Fortune 500 CEO has to deal with on a daily basis. Do you see where this goes? Some of the people you admire so much aren't even worth the admiration because they have miles to go to have actual success. They fool you and trick themselves. And for the others, the statistical outliers, the ones who are really rich and beautiful, you probably don't give them enough credit for having achieved something amazing. And how would you? You don't even truly know any of them, but you keep comparing. Let this be the video to tell you it's fine. You can compare yourself to others, nothing wrong with it, but don't let that lead you off track. That's the true danger. You have a great opportunity because there's one person you can give credit to because you actually know this person, and that's you. They are mostly strangers who would have zero impact on you if you switched off the screen. And we cannot have an objective perspective about them because they decide what to show us and how to present themselves online. So everything is already biased and distorted from the get-go. Human beings naturally aren't particularly good with putting numbers into perspective. 20 years ago, there was no social media. Your circle of comparison was rather small and only referred to the people who were actually around. And in order to change the circle you would compare yourself with, you needed to physically change location. Nowadays, you can stay exactly where you're at right now and still access the biggest circle of reference for comparison through a single device. And that circle of reference is basically every single human being with an internet connection. Over 5 billion people basically. 5 billion reference points. A few less considering some may not be social media users. Either way, statistics play the key role here. It's much more likely to outperform a random group of a few people as opposed to an entire football stadium. These are very good reasons to reduce and cut social media consumption right now. How can you use social media, such as Instagram, to even support your self-esteem? Is that even possible? Research on self-esteem and comparisons found that using social media for yourself, pictures with friends, and amazing experiences you shared with them are things that will make you feel good about yourself. You look back at the good times. You remember the cool shit you've done in your life, the purity of living your best life, and being able to now look at it again, regaining the feeling you've once had. This correlates positively with your self-esteem. The greatest part, at least you know your experiences and accomplishments are real if you're honest with yourself. Use the proven aspects of social media to support your well-being and boost your self-esteem. It's so much more effective than studying the life of strangers and getting hooked into empty spirals with zero substance. Also, another reason why you shouldn't focus too much on others, because the true winners out there don't even compete with you. They don't see you because they're obsessed with pushing their own levels. While you are investing time, energy, and oxygen of your brain in them, they produce results. They get their volume done. And that's how the gap between top performers and those who keep comparing themselves widens. They just don't see you. They don't see anyone, because what matters is reaching the highest levels they can possibly reach. And the maximum potential you can reach is completely independent of any other person. And this is how brutal the comparison rat race can be. Your height, your mental capacity, your genetics determine, limit, but also channel your potential. The combination of these factors is unique for each and every human being. After all, another advice you should always follow: put a higher price tag on yourself. Don't want to be compared with average? Don't associate yourself with it. You are on your own mission. Let that sink in. You cannot be compared once you're in a different league, your own league. And the problem with a statement like compare yourself to who you were yesterday is the fact that it makes it seem you have to use the statement in a pitiful way of saying you aren't as good as the others out there, but that's okay because at least you're better than yourself yesterday. It sounds a bit like, well, objectively you're still a loser, just not as bad as yesterday. But here's the thing, this has nothing to do with being insufficient or worse than others. In fact, you might be ahead of many. The message of the statement is the following: if you actually want to get ahead, focus on what you can control, which is you. And in case that helps you to objectively be more successful than other people, that's a nice byproduct and it feels amazing until you realize other people may have nicer byproducts. To remain in a good state of mind and to get ahead again, focus back on you. Don't get lost again in the comparison rat race. And keep the social comparison theory in mind and use it to your advantage. If the urge to compare yourself to others keeps coming, flip the perspective and use comparison in both directions to humble you. You can escape the rat race by realizing you've never been one of these rats in the first place. This is your game, your race, and we as other people just live in it. You're the director and producer. How do you want to see yourself as? I'd say you're the hero of your own movie. Thanks for watching.